Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to your online lecture series of W222 microprocessor systems. This is the first lecture of week 13, lecture number 37, and in this lecture we are going to discuss the timer period register in timer 2 and the capture compare PWM CCP or ECCP module in PKTNF 4550. So let's start with the lecture with timer 2. We have already discussed the timer 0 and timer 1 operations and the different modes and options available with timer 1 and timer 0, and today we are going to finish the timer peripheral for PKTN. Timer 2 is similar to timer 1 and timer 0 in operation. I will focus on the differences in this lecture. The salient features of timer 2 are listed here in the datasheet in section 13. So the timer 2 is an 8-bit timer. Timer 2 is not a 16-bit timer. Timer 0 could be used in both 8 and 16-bit modes. Timer 1 could only be used in a 16-bit mode, and timer 2 can only be used in 8-bit mode. So we can count from 0 to 256 maximum in timer 2. The operation is similar. There is a prescaler and postscaler associated with timer 2. We didn't see anything about the term postscaler yet. We only discussed the prescaler that were present in both timer 0 and timer 1. So we already know what does a prescaler do. In short, it divides the clock input to the timer by a certain number that is software programmable, and we can select from the different available options. Then the postscaler is a similar thing, but the postscaler comes in when the timer overflows. So the interrupt flag of the timer was raised, the TMR2IF, the overflow flag you can say, not the interrupt flag. The overflow flag of a timer is raised automatically whenever the timer overflows. It counts from 0 to the maximum value, and then when it overflows from the maximum value to 0, the overflow flag is set. In case of postscaler, if we enable the postscaler, let's say we choose a postscaler of 4, the overflow flag will be set after 4 overflows of the timer, not after just 1 overflow of the timer. So the postscaler is similar to division of the clock, but after the timer overflow. Most interesting feature of timer 2 is the period register. The timer 0 and timer 1 both had only one 16-bit register, or you can say 2 8-bit registers combined together in the form of a 16-bit register, and they could only count from 0 to the maximum count, the maximum option. In case of 16-bit mode, that was 65536, and in case of an 8-bit mode, it was 256. And if we wanted to use any other value of the count, for example, we did not want a count of 65536 in case of a 16-bit counter, rather we wanted a count of, let's say, 5000. So what we had to do? We had to subtract the desired number of count from the maximum count and preload the timer register with the answer. For instance, we have 65536 counts that can be the maximum counts that can be done in a 16-bit mode, and if we want a count of 5536, let's say, we had to preload the timer with 60,000, and then the timer will start counting up from 60,000, the preloaded value 60,001, 60,002, up to 65,535, and then it will overflow from 65535 to 0, not to the preloaded value. So after every overflow, we manually had to preload the timer with our desired value. So that preload, that manual preload of the timer after every timer overflow resulted in some error of 1 or 2 instruction cycles. How can we remove that error? we can use a period register that is available in timer 2 only. So what happens in timer 2 is, if I can quickly jump to the block diagram of timer 2 here, you can see here that similarly in case of timer 0 and timer 1 there is a clock input. The clock source can be derived from the internal oscillator divided by 4. Then there is a prescaler that divides the clock by a number of 1, 4 or 16. We can choose between any of these three options using the timer prescaler selection bits that are present inside the timer 2 control register. And then we see here there is the actual timer 2 register. In case of timer 0, that was TMR0, TMR0 H and L, and in case of timer 1 this was timer 1 TMR1 H and L. So those were 16 bits. In case of timer 2 it is only TMR2, that is an 8-bit register. But after that we can see here that there is a PR2, the period register for timer 2, and both of the values are going into the comparator. So we only have to load this period register with our desired value, and the timer will start counting from 0, and at each clock cycle both of these values will be automatically compared at the back end without involving the processor, without consuming any machine cycle. At each clock cycle these two values will be compared, and as soon as they become equal, a signal will be sent to the post scaler block. For instance, just assume there is no post scaler. Just assume that as soon as these values, these two registers become equal, the timer 2 overflow flag will be raised, and at the same time automatically the TMR2 register will be cleared automatically, not by the processor, not manually. We don't have to do it. The hardware will do it without consuming any instruction cycle, and if we are not consuming any instruction cycle for anything, that will not result in any delay. For instance, we needed a delay of 100 microseconds. We had a clock of 4 megahertz. So 4 megahertz divided by 4 is 1 megahertz. So 1 megahertz clock is reaching this prescaler input. We choose a prescaler of 1. So the clock comes out of this box without any deviation at this point. At this point a clock of 1 megahertz is present now. So the time period of that clock is 1 microsecond. After every 1 microsecond this TMR2 register will start incrementing. It will increment from 0, 1, 2, 3 up to this value. So if we preload this value with 100, as soon as the value of timer 2 reaches the value of PR2 that was preloaded with 100, the comparator block will set a signal of 1. The match signal, the timer 2 PR2 match signal will be set to 1, and ignoring the post scaler just for now, the timer 2 over flag will be set, and the timer 2 that whose count was 100 at this point will be automatically reset to 0, and the value of PR2 will not change. So if the timer keeps running, it will again start counting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 100. So as soon as it reaches 100 again, the comparator will set a signal and the timer overflow flag will be set again. So after every 100 counts, or after every 100 microseconds, as the count based on this oscillator frequency and prescaler was happening after 1 microsecond, so 100 counts means 100 microseconds. After every 100 microseconds, we will be notified by the timer flag, the timer 2 overflow flag TMR2IF, that 100 microseconds have been passed. Now do whatever you want to do. If I want to generate a waveform, in that case I will just complement the port bit and will return. and I can enable interrupt for timer 2 also. So I can just wait, keep waiting, load PR2 with 100 and start the timer, and will not stop the timer again. So after each time the TMR2 is equal to the PR2 register, the timer overflow flag will be set and the timer interrupt will occur, and inside the interrupt routine we will toggle the port pin as we did in our previous lecture. So that is a huge advantage. We are saving just 1 or 2 instruction cycles in which we had to preload the timer manually after each overflow. But as I said earlier, that those 1 or 2 instruction cycles are crucial. In case of RTCs, that error keeps accumulating with time, and it becomes a huge error after a certain time, so we cannot afford that. So timer 2 can be used to generate very accurate waveforms without having the need to manually preload anything. And now coming to the post scaler, now consider this block is here. So as soon as these two values are equal, the comparator block generates a signal, that is TMR2 PR2 match signal. That is an internal signal that is not present in the form of any flag, and that is not available to the user to read, but that signal is sent to the post scaler block. So if the post scaler was 1, as soon as this signal was received, this timer to overflow flag TMR2 IF will be set to 1. But if we had selected a programmable post scaler that we do have an option of in case of timer 2, we can further delay this setting of this TMR2 IF flag. So because this timer 2 is an 8-bit register, we have a prescaler of 16, and the timer can count up to 256, and the post scaler has a maximum option of 16. We can count 65536 with this timer also. 16 into 16 into 256, 16 for the prescaler, 256 for the timer register, and 16 for the post scaler. So maximum count of 65536 can be achieved with this timer also, by enabling the prescaler and post scaler and choosing the maximum available values for both of them. So after every, if a post scaler of 4 is selected, after every 4 matches, this post scaler will set the TMR2 IF flag, and the interrupt will come if it was enabled. Otherwise only the user will manually read this flag. So otherwise everything is same in timer 2 except from that. So let's see the TMR2 control register. This is the T2 con register, timer 2 control register. Bit number 7, the MSB is unimplemented. It is read as 0. It cannot be written. Then the next 4 bits, these 4 bits, bit number 3, 4, 5 and 6, they are used to select between 16 different combinations of post scaler that range from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 16. So we can choose between any of these 16 values of post scaler for timer 2. Then we have the TMR2 on, that is the usual start stop bit for the timer, and then the least significant 2 bits, bit number 0 and 1, they provide us option for choosing between 3 different values of prescaler, that are 1, 4 and 16. So 1 means no prescaler, the clock is not being divided by 1 is equal to that similar clock. We effectively have option to choose from 2 prescalers, 4 and 16. So this is a fairly simple control register for a timer, and the rest of the operation is same. So these are the registers associated with timer 2. Similar, the global interrupt enable, peripheral interrupt enable, the timer 2 register. In this case it is a single 8-bit register. In case of TMR 0 and 1, there were 2 8-bit registers combined to form a single 16-bit register, pseudo 16-bit register. Then the control register and the timer period register is an additional register in case of timer 2. And finally, coming to the timer 3 and timer 1, they are precisely the same. Their operation is almost 100% the same. You can say 99% the same. Let me go to the block diagram first, and then you will realize this is the block diagram for timer 3 and this is the block diagram for timer 1. You see here, for timer 1 there were 2 bits, there was an oscillator and there was a Schmitt trigger, then there was some prescaler clock selection bit, prescaler synchronization, and the timer register and the on-off overflow. And in case of timer 3, same, 100% same. There are 2 pins connected with an internal oscillator, a Schmitt trigger, the clock selection, a prescaler, synchronization detect, synchronization circuit, and the actual timer clock, the actual timer register. So what is different? The more timers you have, the better it is, in simple words. Yeah, timer 3 is associated with the capture compare module also, and 1 is also related to the capture compare module. Both of these timers are related to the CCP module, the capture compare PWM module, and we will discuss that in today's lecture, inshallah. Just I want to tell you one thing about timer 3 that you have to be very careful of. You can see here that currently we are in section number 14, and this is the block diagram for timer 3, but you can see here this is timer 1 oscillator. Both of these timers share a single oscillator, and if you can further see here that this is T1OS0 and T13CKL and T1OS1, timer 1 oscillator 0 and timer 1 oscillator 1, and this timer 1 oscillator 0 slash timer 1 or 3 clock. So if we are using external clock for timer 1 and timer 3 at the same time, both of the timers will get the clock input from the same source, whether it is the clock or it is the oscillator, the built-in oscillator. In both cases, if both of them have been configured to get their clock input from the external source, both of them will be operated at the same clock, because there is only one physical clock source available for both of these timers that they share between them. So what options do we have? We can configure timer 1 to get its clock from the internal oscillator, and we can configure timer 3 to get its clock from the external source, in which it will be using the same pins that the timer 1 would have been using if it was configured to get the clock from the external source. But we can configure them timer 1 internal clock, timer 3 external clock. Also we can configure them that timer 1 external clock, timer 3 internal clock, and we can also configure them as timer 1 and timer 2 both use the internal clock, or we can configure them as timer 1 and timer 3 both use the external clock. So in this last case, in which they both are using the external clock, both of them will be sharing the same clock source and they will be operated at the same frequency. Apart from this, everything is same. But I will have to go to the timer 3 control register. Similar to timer 1, we have the RD16 bit that enables the read write in 16 or 8-bit operation. It can only act as a 16-bit timer, but that 16-bit register can be read or written in 2 8-bit operations or a single 16-bit operation. Only that option is available. It cannot be used in an 8-bit timer or counter mode. Then we have T3 CCP2 and T3 CCP1. These two pins can be used to choose between 4 available options that are meant for the capture compare module. We have 2 capture compare PWM modules available in PIC18. So as I said that timer 1 and timer 3 both can be associated with that module also, and as we have 2 modules, we have an option to choose whether timer 3 will be associated with both of them, or timer 1 will be associated with both of them, or timer 1 will be associated with one of them and timer 3 will be associated with the second of that. So when we will discuss the CCP module, you will know that how these timers are associated with the CCP module. And then we have the timer 3 prescaler bits similar to timer 1, and we can choose between 4 prescaler values by selecting any combination of these 2 prescaler pins, and those prescaler values that we can choose from range from 1, 2, 4 and 8. Then we have this T3 sync, whether we want to synchronize the external clock with the internal clock or not. The second last pin is timer 3 clock source select. So if we are if we want to select the external source clock source for timer or an internal clock source for timer, this pin can be used. And finally we have the timer 3 on bit that is used to start or stop the timer. At this point the timers are finished. We have done extensive examples for timer 0 and timer 1. I will do one more example, one last example for timers, and in that example I will be modifying my code for the previous lecture, the code in which we made a digital clock using the RTC of timer 1 to generate a precisely 1 second delay without any error. But we were not doing anything else. We were only using one timer in an interrupt enabled mode, and we were making a clock. In this lecture I am going to use the same code. I am going to modify it and I am going to add an additional feature by enabling timer 2 also along with timer 1, so that you know how to use 2 different timers in a single program, or 3 or 4 different timers in a single program. And also I will be going to enable interrupts for both of those timers. Timer 1 and timer 2 both will be interrupt enabled. So in this case we will also be seeing how to set the interrupt priority, because the interrupt can now be generated by either timer 1 or 2. So we have to decide which one has the priority. Lastly, in this program we will be generating a precisely timed waveform using the PR2 register of the timer 2. So let's start coding and let's open the code that we wrote in our previous lecture for the clock. So we will start modifying this code. And see here, going to the main subroutine, we have declared the port A, B and D as the outputs. We have enabled the global and peripheral interrupts, and then the interrupt for the timer 1 is enabled. Timer 1 control register has been loaded with the required values, and if as far as I remember, this one was for the RD16 to enable the 16-bit read-write mode, and this these two were used to set the asynchronized mode. We are not going to synchronize our external clock, and this was going to select the external clock source for the timer, because we were getting the clock from the external oscillator. And then we preloaded the ports with the initial values of hours, minutes and seconds that were all 0. We just started the timer afterwards and then kept waiting, and the timer started to count from 0 to 65535, and then as soon as it got overflowed from 65535 to 0, an interrupt came and the processor stopped working and jumped to this ISR. And in this ISR, the first thing we used to do was to increment the seconds. So we are not compromising and we are not losing any single microsecond at this point, because this is the first thing that we are going to do. Then the timer kept running in the background, so the timer count was not disturbed. and after completing all this subroutine, the checks etc., we updated the values of hours, minutes and seconds on the ports, cleared the flag and returned. What we want to do right now is we want to add an additional waveform with this code by enabling the timer 2 and enabling the interrupt for timer 2. And where we want to see that waveform, where we want to generate that waveform, on port C2. So I want to declare tris C2 as an output. At port C2 a waveform will be generated. RC2 is equal to 0. So the port C2 is cleared initially. Then at this point I will load the values into the timer 2 control register. T2 con is equal to 0B what? Let's go to the control register in the data sheet. What we want to do, let's decide first. We want our waveform to remain on for 200 microseconds and remain off for 100 microseconds. Our waveform should not have a duty cycle of 50%. So we cannot simply toggle the pin. We have to see its previous state, and if its previous state was 1, we have to set it to 0 and give a delay of 100 microseconds. And in the next cycle we again have to check its previous state, and if its previous state was 0, we have to set it to 1 and give a delay of 200 microseconds. So now the duty cycle will be 66%, 200 microseconds on and 100 microseconds off. So let's see, we have a clock of 4 megahertz. Every count will be microsecond. Okay. So we don't have to use any prescaler, we don't have to use any post scaler. We will not turn on the timer at this point. So all of these bits will be set to 0. 0B, 0000, 0000, no prescaler, no post scaler, timer is off at this point. The next thing what we want to do is, let me cut this and let me paste it after this settings of these control registers. Global interrupt is enabled, peripheral interrupt is enabled, timer 1 interrupt is enabled, and now I want to enable the interrupt for timer 2 also. So TMR2IE is equal to 1 also. The values have been initialized on the port, and finally timer 1 has been turned on and TMR2 on is also equal to 1. Timer 2 has also been turned on, and again this is while 1. So still we are not doing anything except those two tasks, and interestingly both of those tasks will be handled in the background. So in the front end we still are not doing anything. We will make programs, we will develop programs and for those applications in which this while 1 waiting will be replaced by a continuous task. But for now we are doing two tasks in parallel, but both of them are handled by the interrupt service routine and timers and the peripherals that are working in the background. So it's okay. The decimal adjust subroutines do not need to be changed. All we need to do is to change the ISR. So in the interrupt service routine, now what is our priority? Let's decide here first whether our priority is the RTC or our priority is the waveform. I think our priority is the waveform, because in case of RTC what matters is there is no error accumulation. The updating of values on the display is not critical. For example, if there is a consistent delay in updating of the values onto the display is updated after 1.01 seconds, but it is always 1.01 seconds, the error is not being accumulated. Only there is a little bit of delay in displaying of that value. There is no error in calculation. But in case of the form generation, what we are doing is we are again sending the physical value to the port. So the time period of that port will be affected. If we wanted a delay of 200 microseconds, if we give it a lower priority and both the interrupts come at the same time, it may result in making the on time from 200 microsecond to 203 microseconds, 2 to 3 microsecond error. So in that case, the error will be a physical error in the waveform, in the time period of the waveform and in the duty cycle of the waveform. But on the other hand, in case of the RTC, that is not an actual error, that is just a delay when we are displaying it to the actual 7-segment display. The error is not being accumulated. So what we want to do is we want to give a higher priority to our timer 2 that is generating the actual waveform, and a lower priority to the timer 1 that is just displaying the value onto the 7-segment displays. So let's write an if condition here. If TMR1IF is equal to 1, do this. Previously, as we had only one interrupt enabled, we didn't have to check inside the ISR that because of which interrupt we came into this subroutine. There was only one source of interrupt, so whenever the program is inside the ISR, that was due to that one source. There was no other source, so we did not have to check inside the ISR that why I am here, whether it was timer 1 or timer 2 or timer 3 or ADC or whatever. There was only timer 1. We didn't have to check this, we didn't have to write this condition. But now we have two sources and both of them lead to this same subroutine. So inside this subroutine, now I have to know why I am here. Which of these two sources caused me to jump into this subroutine? So inside this subroutine, the first thing I have to do is to check why I am here, what was the source of the interrupt. So I checked for timer 1 here, and above this I have to check if TMR2IF is equal to 1, then what? Because now timer 2 has a higher priority, the waveform has a higher priority, I am checking it first. I am checking it before the timer 1 interrupt. If in case both the interrupts come at the same time, so it will first entertain this and then entertain this and then finally exit this ISR. So now what's left is what I have to write inside this if condition when the timer 2 interrupt came. In case the timer 2 interrupt comes, the TMR2 register matched with the PR2 register, that we know. So what we don't know is what was the previous state of the port. So we have to first see what was the previous state of the port. Which port? If let C2, if the let C2 is equal to 1, what I have to do, what I want to do, I want to set it to 0 and give a delay of how many microseconds? 100 microseconds. So PR2 is equal to 100 and let C2 is equal to 0. What it will do is it will check if the interrupt came at that point, if the value of RC2 was 1, so it will set it to 0, give a delay of 100 now. So how to give a delay of 100? And the next delay will be 100 when the next interrupt will come when the PR2 and timer 2 registers will match. So if I set PR2 to 100, after counting 100, the timer 2 will overflow and the interrupt will come. And in the other case, let's copy and paste it. If let C2 is equal to 0, what I want to do? I want to set it to 1 and give a delay of 200. Now some of you would be thinking, that we are still manually preloading this PR2 register with our desired value if we are using a duty cycle of any value other than 50%. If it was 50%, we just had to load it once and then forget about that. Just have to keep toggling the LADC2. But in this case, I purposely chose an example where our time period was not 50%. Our duty cycle was not 50%. So in case of a different on and off time, in case of a duty cycle other than 50%, we have to manually change every time the delay for on cycle and off cycle. So we are still manually preloading the value. PR2 is equal to 100, PR2 is equal to 200. Did I say something wrong here? I used the word preloading for PR2. PR2 is not preloaded. PR2 is just loaded. So it is not resulting in any error. How? Let me explain. Timer 2 was started. It started counting from 0, 1, 2, 3 up to 200. There was 200. Let's assume there was 200 in PR2 previously. As soon as it reached 200, the registers matched, an interrupt came. Interrupt came, the processor stopped, it jumped to the ISR, it came here, it checked if the interrupt was due to timer 2, yes it was. It came here, it checked if let's say 2 was 1, yes it was. It came down and it loaded PR2 with 100. And remember, the timer is still running in the background. So maybe when it reached this point, at this particular point, the timer has already counted up to maybe 3, 4, 5, 10, whatever value. Now I am not changing that value. I am not fiddling with the timer register. Rather, I am updating the period register to which that register will compare its value. So if I change this value from 100 to 200 or 200 to 100, I am at least sure, I am certain that even if my timer was running in the background, it did not reach 100. It may have reached 10 at max, but it did not reach 100. So it will keep comparing. Previously it was comparing it to 100. Now it will start comparing with 100 and it will keep incrementing. So that that value was not reset. That value was not disturbed. And that is very crucial. That will not result in an error. On the other hand, if I was preloading the timer 2 register here at this point, if we did not have the PR2 register and we had to preload the timer 2 register instead of loading the timer the period register, what would happen? At this point, the TMR2 had already counted up to, let's say, 10 after overflowing. And after counting to 10, I am preloading it with the value of, let's say, 156 because I needed 100 count. So it will start from 156, 157, 158 up to 256. 256 to 256 are 100 counts. But the timer was already at a count of 10 at that point. So the total count will become 110. And that 10 is an error. And this period register is crucial for that, and it is eliminating that error. So now you know the advantage, big advantage that we are getting in case of timer 2 with this period register. This is a huge advantage and we will be using it in CCP, ECCP also. Right now we are manually checking some flags. We are manually checking the state. we are manually loading the period register. That does not result in error, but it is somewhat hectic to specify every time that this is my duty cycle. Why cannot I just say that I want a duty cycle of XYZ% and it should automatically generate that waveform? So I do have a period register. Period means time period. My time period will be fixed. My duty cycle will not be fixed. To change the duty cycle, I have to change this. But what if I had one time period register and one dedicated duty cycle register? And I would just say, okay, this is my time period, this is my duty cycle, start generating waveform, and it will generate the waveform for you. And it will do it. The capture compare PWM module will actually do it. It will have a dedicated register for the time period, it will have a dedicated register for the duty cycle. And another interesting thing about that is we can change the duty cycle in real time. So remember, the PWM we discuss in pulse width modulation, we are only modulating the width of the pulse, the width of the on cycle, not the frequency. The frequency remains same. The width of the on cycle is changed to change what? The effective RMS value of that waveform. And by that we can change the speed of a motor, we can change the intensity of a bulb, we can do a lot of things. So that will be discussed in our capture compare PWM module. That is our next module. So let's build this program and let's try to simulate it. The build is successful. We didn't do anything extraordinary in this one. We just modified the program a little bit. So let's start the simulation in Proteus. This is our previous design, and here I have connected this oscilloscope pin to RC2. That was our output. So what we should have is, we should have a waveform with 200 microsecond on cycle and 100 microsecond off cycle, and the clocks should keep working in the background. And I will tell one more thing about the clock or the Proteus and the stopwatch. So let's see that. Okay, so here is our waveform. This is not good. That is not what we required. So we did something wrong in this code. Okay, so I have found the error. There were two silly mistakes. One, I missed clearing of the timer to interrupt flag after exiting this loop in the ISR. So remember, always clear the interrupt flag when you are exiting the loop. And second mistake is that I used two if conditions here, two independent if conditions. These should not be independent. These conditions should be dependent conditions, because if RC2 was 1, let's see here, if RC2 was 1, I am making RC2 is equal to 0, and then I am loading PR2, and then I am checking if RC2 is equal to 0, then set it back to 1. So I am just setting it to 0 and I am checking it again at the next line. I don't want to do that. What I want to do is, I check if it was 1, well and good. If it was not 1, only then check if it is 0 or not. So this should not have been if. This should have been an else condition. So now let's try to compile it again, and I hope that it will work fine this time. Okay, yes. So the scale is at 50 microseconds. 2 boxes 50 microsecond mean 100 microseconds off time, and 4 boxes for 50 microsecond means it is 200 microseconds on time. And at the background this clock is running just like we wanted it to. One thing I wanted to tell you in addition was, some of you might try to test this delay, as I claimed that it is precisely 1 second delay using your stopwatch, and even I tried to do it myself, but you will notice that this is not correct. When I open my stopwatch and I start my stopwatch along with the simulation, this is more delay than what there should have been. So what's wrong? I claim that it is precisely 1 second, but on stopwatch it is not. So that is not the problem in our delay. That is a problem with Proteus, and that is not actually a problem with Proteus. Proteus does not simulate in real time. Here at the bottom left corner you can see that a timer is running, and this is the time scale that Proteus is using for the simulation. And if we can see here that in Proteus environment this much time has passed, 1 minute 37 seconds, and that is exactly what we have. We did not have any issue with our code or with our delay. In the Proteus environment the time is different to what that we are experiencing in real life, so that is not an issue. So this is it. At this point I conclude the timer peripherals for PK18, and next now we are going to start the capture compare PWM module of this microcontroller. And looking at the time consumed for this lecture, I think that I'm going to make a separate lecture for the CCP module. If I start that module in this same lecture, that would become, this lecture will become too lengthy. So that's it for this lecture. If you have any questions, if you have any confusions, please feel free to contact me via Microsoft Teams in the week 13, and I'll be more than happy to answer. So until next lecture, take care, stay safe, Allah Hafiz.